My name is Leon C. Feiger. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and I can give you a little background. I lived at 507 East Chestnut Street when I was young, and believe it or not, the pharmacy school, which was associated with University of Kentucky, was basically on Chestnut Street at First and Chestnut. So actually, after World War II, the veterans took all the jobs. You couldn't hardly get a job. I was working at the Bon-Ton shoe store. I worked at the Mary Jane shoe store, but when the veterans came back from World War II, you couldn't get a job. So basically what I did, since I lived on Chestnut Street and the pharmacy school was on Chestnut, I went to the pharmacy school. Then I went to summer school at the University of Wisconsin, and I graduated in 3 years with a pharmacy degree. But when I graduated, about 6 months later, I was drafted into the Korean War. When they found out I was in the ROTC, they made me squad leader of Dog 13th Air Army Division. In other words, I'd just be a buck private. My basic training was at Fort Knox. Yeah, I really like Fort Knox because it was good exercise and I was taught to use an M1, but I liked the carbine rifle better because it was lighter. The M1 was a good rifle, very accurate, but it was very heavy. But basically, actually, at Fort Knox, they had Agony and Misery Hill, and there was nothing for me to go up and down. But golly, those tough guys from Eastern Kentucky who were wild men, they were passing out. We had to throw them in the back of a truck and take them back to the barracks. The basic training was about 2 or 3 months. But Fort Knox is about 35 miles from Louisville. Believe it or not, it was actually close enough where when I got off of duty, if I wanted to come home, I could drive home. But then I always drove back to make sure I would be there in the morning to be able to work in the pharmacy. I had pretty much freedom there. It was pretty free. When I was at Fort Knox, I was just basically an infantryman. But one of the sergeants there was a very mean sergeant. And when he found out that I was a pharmacist, he had me transferred to the pharmacy at Fort Knox because I could get him his trichonhydrate codeine for the tickle in his throat. So he was very nice to me. And then one day he came up to me and said, "You gotta go overseas, you can't stay here forever." So I said, "Where do you want to send me?" He said, "I want to send you to the Caribbean. They need a pharmacist down there in Panama Canal." So I told him I was really pretty young. I said, "I gotta ask my mama." So I asked my mama, and she said, "Oh no, I don't want you to go there because you'll get snake bite and malaria." But the sergeant said, "Oh, the heck with that, I'm gonna send you anyhow, that's better than getting killed." After they found out I was a pharmacist, then they had me work at pharmacy at Fort Knox. They called it the Old Cantonment Hospital, which was a wooden building. Now, of course, they got a modern brick building there. So I ended up in Panama Canal. Now they shipped me, they sent me up to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, where I waited for a ship to take me to Panama. The ship basically was a captured German ship from World War II, but they changed the name of it to Lieutenant General Gathos. So I went on the boat. And let me tell you, I had to stay at Camp Kilmer. It was so cold that basically I didn't undress, and I used a mattress for a blanket. It was freezing up there. When they sent me to Fort Clayton, I was also a pharmacist at the Fort Clayton Hospital, and it was really a beautiful place. It was a beautiful hospital. I lived at Fort Clayton, and they had about a 4-story barracks across from the hospital. The Fort Clayton actually was basically a R&R hospital from Korean veterans that might have gotten injured in Korea. The food there was very good. In fact, when I worked at the Fort Clayton Hospital, at 10 o'clock we all went up and had donuts and coffee. Only thing is, if you were an officer, you had a tablecloth. But the donuts were good. Now, I actually showed at nighttime at the hospital, on the roof they would have a movie. Some of the latest movies that you could get from Los Angeles, from really some pretty good movies. The Army really took very good care of us. We had tennis courts, and believe it or not, we had a bar in the basement, but they didn't serve beer. They were basically just, it was very, if they had beer, it was called like half-strength beer, but we had Pepsi Cola, we could have ice cream. We had that in the basement of the barracks. So it was very nice. They really took care of us as soldiers. And they had a beautiful swimming pool. And then I'll tell you what, they used to take us out fishing on an Army boat. And then believe it or not, we went deep sea fishing. They gave us the poles, the bait, and we caught nice big fish in the Caribbean. And we caught the fish, we brought them back to the mess hall, and they cooked them. Believe it or not, they actually cooked the fish. They were good fish. Very fresh, because I just caught them. But they really made sure we weren't bored. They kept us pretty busy. Like I said, with tennis, they had a golf course, they had movie theaters all through the place. and it was really very, very nice. Basically, we had very large equipment. We used to make ointments for athletes' feet and jungle rot, and we put them in little canisters and we gave them to the soldiers. And we make sure they all took their medicine for malaria. They all had to take malaria medication. But it was a very busy pharmacy. It was very modern, very beautiful. Basically, we used antibiotics in those days we don't even hear about today. We had aureomycin, acromycin, we had elixir butasol. Now it's a funny thing, we always have funny names. Elixir butasol was a liquid we used to call it green syrup. And then the antibiotics, acromycin, we used to call them golden capsules. We had crazy names for the drugs. It was just so we have a little bit more fun in the pharmacy, so it wouldn't be that strict. But the pharmacy was beautiful and modern. And I had to make ointment in such a big machine. It was like you bake bread in a bread factory. The machine was very big. The big job really was cleaning the machine out from an ointment. But we put them in little bitty tin cans and ointment jars, and we gave them out to the soldiers if they needed for athletes' feet or anything else. And we all had to take a capsule for malaria. That was a big thing in Panama. We used to go into Panama for a nickel, and we used to, the little buses were very small, and a lot of the people on there just spoke Spanish, but I had to know the word to tell them to stop, and I think the word we used was parada, and they used to stop the bus and let us off. I really learned a little bit of Spanish, believe it or not, I did, because that's all basically they spoke except for the servicemen from America. And we all had some of the prescriptions were filled in Spanish. But it wasn't hard at all because it was all printed out. You could just copy it. And we did it the old-fashioned way. We used a typewriter. We didn't have computers in those days. We used a typewriter. Well, the weather in Panama was very hot, and we had to be very careful about the mosquitoes so we wouldn't get malaria. So they were constantly spraying the place. But the weather was nice, and believe it or not, the people in Panama were very friendly. They really liked music. They liked to dance. They used to have a dance called the mambo, and they were just happy people. And basically, when we went into Panama City, I bought this right here. I found this in one of their stores. It was a real nice wood carving that they made in Panama, and I was very proud of that. And believe it or not, I still like it till today. Now, when I was in Panama, they had a photo contest, and I heard about it, but I didn't think about entering. But my brother, who was in service in Japan during the Korean War, he had a color slide that I sent him, and he liked it. He sent it back to me, and it was this picture right here. And I called the picture Native Talent, and I entered it in a photo contest. Believe it or not, I won first prize. As a result, I got this certificate over here, Certificate of Accomplishment from the Department of the Army. It was signed by the Secretary of the Army, Stevens. So they gave me that, and they also gave me a fishing box. Oh, they gave me since they liked the slide, they gave me a projector and $200, and I still had the projector in the basement, and it still works. But I wanted to show you, this was the picture called Native Talent, and that was the award I got from the Secretary of the Army. Now basically, this here is what I looked like when I went into the Army. I looked like that. Boy, I was really young then. I was about 20 some odd years old. But I really liked the Army. I like basic training, I like the exercise, and then I like working at the pharmacy at Fort Knox. These are my dog tags. I remember my serial number, US 52079-393. I still got them since the Korean War. They're right here. I'm not going to get rid of them. I was a buck private, but then I made private first class. I was in there for, actually, I was in the service for 2 years. So basically, it started out, it was going to be 18 months, but then they extended it, an act of Congress. But I got out in 1953. I went in 1951, and I was discharged in 1953, 2 years later. I really didn't mind if I stayed in longer because I liked Panama a lot. The people there were very nice, beautiful hospital, and a great bunch of guys that worked in a pharmacy. Dudley Ball, he passed away, but I keep in touch with his widow. And one fellow was from Ponce, Puerto Rico, Suarez Soto. He was a pharmacist from Puerto Rico. He was very nice. Well, in Panama, they had a boat bring me back to New York. But then when I got in New York, they flew me to Fort Campbell. And Fort Campbell is where I got discharged. Fort Campbell is right near the Kentucky-Tennessee border. Well, basically, they just check out your health, make sure that you feel okay if you're not disabled anyway, and then after that, they just give you an honorable discharge paper, which I have in the basement in a cabinet. I have an honorable discharge. By the way, when I got out to civilian life, I was a pharmacist here. I worked in all the Walgreens, but basically, I really enjoyed working at the VA hospital where I volunteered in the pharmacy. I kind of liked being a soldier. It was really pretty good.
Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me and answer questions about your experience in the Army.
Well, it was very nice of you to ask me these questions. I was very proud to be in the service and to be able to serve my country. God bless America. Thank you very much.